Cop tasers veteran at wife's grave. SWAT reporter and daughter. Uncover conspiracy. Imagine kneeling beside your wife's fresh grave, the moonlight barely cutting through the dying autumn leaves, when suddenly a high-pitched crack splits the silence and sears your body with 50,000 volts. You didn't resist, you just wanted one last moment to whisper goodbye. But the officer insists you're a threat. And the next thing you know, you're handcuffed, humiliated, and fighting to stay conscious in a place meant for mourning, not murder. What happens when justice itself turns lethal if you refuse to stand by, while power betrays the innocent? Subscribe and hit the bell now. Over the next 35 minutes, you'll witness a grieving veteran's final goodbye, twisted into a life or death struggle for truth and revenge. Like and comment how you would fight back, because justice needs all of us. The orange glow of streetlights flickers against the wrought iron gates of Burr Oak Cemetery as the autumn chill settles over Chicago's South Side. Fallen leaves swirl at the feet of a lone figure kneeling by a granite headstone. 62-year-old Marcus Johnson, his Army medic uniform long since replaced by a faded windbreaker. His breath puffs in short, ragged gusts as he traces a gloved fingertip over the name Evelyn. 40 years of laughter, late-night stories, and shared coffee mornings distilled into a single slab of stone. Around him, the city's hum feels distant, swallowed by the hush of tombstones and the distant wail of a CTA train. 3 hours earlier, Marcus had stood at Evelyn's side, holding the folded flag above her casket with trembling hands. He watched the minister's words float past him, talk of faith and farewell, while his heart jammed against his ribs like a live grenade. He remembered the war zones of Kandahar shrapnel ripping through sand, the desperate plea of a wounded comrade, and the steady weight of Evelyn's hand pushing him forward when nightmares dragged him under. Now the same hands that once stitched battle wounds and carried brothers to safety tremble as he fights to find breath. The gatekeeper's clock flashed 6:02 p.m., but Marcus remained because home offered only an empty chair and silence thicker than this December dusk. Neon bar signs and traffic snarls mocked the stillness beyond the cemetery wall. Here among the dead, he found permission to grieve. The smell of damp earth mingled with the faint tang of tobacco from a nearby memorial candle, a reminder that Evelyn's favorite spot under the old oak was just steps away. As Marcus sat back on a weathered bench, the wind tugged at his collar and carried distant sirens, an unwelcome echo of the helicopters that once hovered above desert battlefields. He closed his eyes, picturing Evelyn's smile as she recounted tales from the VA hospital where she volunteered for veterans like him. He could almost hear her soft chuckle scolding him for burning coffee again. Each memory hit like a pulse, the promise he made at her bedside. "I'll tell our story," and the guilt that knotted his chest when he realized he might never keep it. In the gathering shadows, a patrol car idled beyond the iron fence. A lone headlight swept the rows of graves before settling on Marcus. His heart thudded not out of fear, but because recognition stabbed him sharper than any bullet. He was a veteran from a war. No one wanted to remember a black man in a city where trust between his community and the badge had frayed to tatters. Yet today, he hoped for nothing more than a few final moments of farewell. With each tick of a nearby grandfather clock memorial, Marcus felt time slipping away. The skin on his cheeks pulsed with cold, his joints aching like old machine parts. Still he whispered Evelyn's name, a lifeline in the dark. Unseen eyes watched him scanning for defiance where there was only grief. In the next breath, the wind carried a distant pop of radio static, an omen that the fragile peace of this place was about to shatter. The patrol car's engine cut out, leaving only the hum of distant traffic and the rustle of dead leaves. Marcus pressed his back into the cold bench, every muscle taut with exhaustion and sorrow. He didn't notice the heavy boots crunching on gravel until a beam of harsh light swept across his face. Sir Cemetery's closed. A voice barked Detective Kyle Miller, badge glinting under the street lamp. Miller's eyes were steel. His posture was rigid like a soldier who never really left the base. Marcus raised a hand to shield his eyes. "I'm sorry, officer. I'm just a funeral's over." Miller interrupted, checking his watch. His tone held no room for explanation. Rules are rules. He stepped forward, the beam from his flashlight dancing over Marcus's trembling form. Stand up. Marcus tried to rise, but his legs shook, and he sank back onto the bench. Each breath felt like inhaling needles. Please, I lost my wife today. I just need a minute. Miller's jaw clamped. He pulled a slim radio from his belt. Dispatch suspect refusing to comply. Send backup. Code 3. His fingers tapped out a short sequence. 10-4. Priority red. Marcus's heart thudded. Code red wasn't protocol in Chicago PD. It was a military term. Don't resist, Miller snarled. He cocked his hand, revealing the taser. Hands on the hood. The blue spark of the taser's probes crackled in the night. Marcus obeyed, arms outstretched, palms flat against the granite bench. The faint click of Miller arming the device echoed like a gunshot in the hush. Then the charge bit. Marcus's knees buckled as 50,000 volts ripped through nerves scorched raw. His vision fractured into white-hot shards. The taser's buzz pounded in his skull. Limbs convulsed without warning. He tasted copper as he bit down on his tongue. A guttural cry tore from his throat, swallowed by the headstones. Miller's voice cut through the agony. Stop resisting. He applied a second burst. Marcus's memories fractured Evelyn's lullabies, mixing with helicopter blades in Helmand Province. Burning tents, and the wail of ambulances. The world shrank to a pulse of pain. When the taser finally clicked off, Marcus sagged against the bench, convulsing breaths, his only resistance. His jacket smoked faintly at the probe sites. Blood trickled from his mouth. He tried to swallow. His voice was sandpaper. I'm not resisting. Miller shoved him to the ground. Cuff him. Two uniformed officers emerged from the shadows, boots thudding on wet grass. One yanked Marcus's arms behind him. Iron cuffs bit into wrists that had once carried wounded brothers to safety. His skin blanched under the cold steel. In the distance, headlights flared as 3 more squad cars screeched to a halt. Sirens wailed, but the noise felt distant like an echo in a cavern. Marcus lay crumpled head against damp soil, staring up at gravestones, guardian angels in stone. He thought he heard someone whisper his name, but voices blurred dispatch updates, Miller's orders. Proceed as planned. Why? Why me? Marcus rasped, chest heaving. Miller knelt, face inches from his. The detective's breath smelled of stale coffee and determination. You shouldn't have come back, he hissed. We have orders. His gaze flicked to the back of Marcus's jacket, faded army medic patch barely visible. Secrets die with their witnesses. Something in Marcus snapped anger, lacing pain into fuel. What secrets? I'm just a grieving husband. He coughed, spitting blood. The taste rotted in his mouth. He saw Miller's eyes narrow. Your wife's death wasn't an accident. Miller spat. She knew too much. Another officer crouched nearby, fingers brushing a concealed pistol. Marcus forced himself to lift his head, summoned every ounce of dignity left. My wife? She was a nurse. She helped people. Words stumbled. The thought of Evelyn's skin pale from chemo stories about patients flickering through his mind made his chest clamp with grief. She didn't deserve this. Miller straightened, voice cold. We need you silenced. He nodded to his men. A boot connected with Marcus's ribs. Air exploded from his lungs. The force rattled his spine. He curled into a ball, instinctively protecting his torso. Pain bloomed like fire. He heard Miller's low laugh, a sound that tasted of betrayal. Try to crawl, old man, another cop jeered, kicking at his shoulder. Marcus's vision swam. For a moment he imagined Evelyn's face, gentle eyes, a lullaby on her lips. He clung to that image, unwilling to let the darkness claim him now. He'd promised her. Tell our story. A voice crackled in his ear, but not Miller's radio. This was raw, urgent target under fire. The words cut through his haze. Marcus tried to turn his head. Flashlight beams carved through the fog, 6 of them moving in formation, deliberate. A van's door slammed somewhere beyond the fence. Miller cursed. They're here early. He motioned the other officers to tighten the circle. Marcus's vision sharpened silhouettes, slipping between the grave markers clad in black weapons at the ready, but faces unknown. The wind carried a metallic tang gun, oil adrenaline. Miller took a step back, rattling his radio. Command, we need extraction. His sentence cut short as a high-caliber round thunked into the ground inches from his boot. Dirt sprayed up. His face went pale. Hold position, he barked, but his voice wavered. The interloper squad advanced 3 at the gate, 2 flanking the sidewall, 1 emerging like a shadow behind the officers. Their movements were synchronized, silent as predators. In a flash, a rifle stock slammed against Miller's back. He gasped, twisting, but a gloved hand wrenched him down, disarming him before he could draw his pistol. Detective Miller, a voice whispered, low familiar tempered by years of combat. Marcus blinked through blurred focus. The figure knelt beside him, peeling back a hood. Recognition thundered through him. Sergeant James Mitchell, eyes steely, but concerned a scar tracing his jaw. Marcus almost laughed through the pain, the boy I carried out of that ambush. Mitchell glanced at the circle of corrupt officers, then to Marcus's battered form. You okay, Doc? He asked, using Marcus's old nickname. Marcus managed a weak nod. Around them, the other operatives secured weapons, cuffed Miller's men, and moved hostiles to the ground without pulling triggers. Miller lunged, roaring. Mitchell met him with a single palm strike to the chest that forced the detective back. You attacked a veteran at his wife's grave, Mitchell said. His voice was cold steel, on whose orders Miller spat blood. You don't understand? I understand enough, Mitchell interrupted. He tapped a tablet displaying Miller's communications messages that exposed the assassination plot, the timeline, the poisoning that killed Evelyn. Miller's bravado crumbled as the evidence played out in the glow of the screen. Marcus pushed himself up on one elbow, vision swimming. He saw Avery Thomas, Detective Miller's daughter, step through the gate phone-raised live stream glowing in her hand. Her pale face was streaked with tears as she narrated, "This is my father ordering my husband's execution," because he knows he witnessed corruption. Shock froze Miller in place. The final piece clicked into Marcus's battered mind. Avery's courage, Sophia's covert recording, Mitchell's silent vigil. This was more than rescue. It was justice. As uniformed SWAT and federal agents poured over the fence sirens shouting triumph in the approaching distance, Marcus closed his eyes and let the weight of the moment settle. The pain was still there, throbbing in every limb, but beneath it was something new, vindication. He opened his eyes to see Miller being led away in cuffs, Avery racing to his side. Mitchell offered him a hand steady as the day he carried a wounded Marine through hostile lines. You kept your promise, Marcus rasped at voice hoarse. Mitchell nodded. We kept ours. In the hush of Burr Oak Cemetery, lit now by flashing red and blue lights, rather than sorrow, Marcus allowed himself to believe that justice, long delayed, had finally arrived. Marcus's vision blurred as he lay crumpled on the damp grass, but his spirit ignited the moment he saw those 6 silent figures fanning out across the cemetery. He remembered Evelyn's voice in his ear. Promise me you'll tell the truth. That vow was a spark. He drew in a ragged breath, chest still heaving, and forced his body into a seated position. Pain shot through every joint, but he pressed on. He fumbled for his phone, one hand shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. A single unread message from Sophia Ramirez blinked on the lock screen. I've got the recordings. Ready when you are. His thumb hovered over the reply button. He didn't need time to think. This was the moment to reclaim control. Do it now, he whispered to himself, then tapped a single word. Go. Within seconds, Sophia's voice crackled over his earpiece. Live feed on. SWAT is 2 minutes out. Avery's in position. Marcus felt adrenaline flood his veins, drowning out the pain. He glanced at Kyle Miller, still barking orders at the other officers, convinced they had the upper hand. But Marcus knew the real cavalry arriving was unseen and unstoppable. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, visualizing every step of what was about to happen. First, Sophia's live stream would broadcast Miller's own incriminating radio calls. Code red, eliminate target, straight to every screen within the city limits. Next, Avery Thompson Miller's daughter would reveal the private video from inside her father's car, showing him ordering Marcus's execution. Finally, the SWAT team would breach the gates, surround the corrupt officers, and secure Marcus's safety. A sudden radio burst deployment in 60 seconds. He steeled himself. Every memory of combat, every night he carried wounded brothers through enemy fire, returned with laser focus. He drew himself upright, planted his hands under his battered shoulders, and stood defiantly beneath the headstone. Marcus Johnson. "Do you copy?" Sophia's voice was calm but urgent. "I copy," he rasped. "Broadcasting now." Hundreds of viewers tuned in as Sophia's steady narration cut through the tension. "What you're about to hear is Detective Kyle Miller ordering a fellow veteran's death at his wife's grave." The tainted radio log played over Miller's voice, repeating, "Proceed as planned." Elimination in chilling clarity. A collective gasp echoed across comment threads. Miller's eyes widened. He spun toward the gate as headlights carved beams through tombstones. "This isn't a drill," he snarled, hand flying to his holster. Avery emerged from the shadows, phone raised. Her voice shook with controlled fury. "Dad, why are you trying to kill him?" "You." She paused as tears glistened on her cheeks. "You're a killer." Her broadcast flipped to show the in-car footage, Miller's orders, his admission that Evelyn's death was orchestrated. Dozens of local reporters and bystanders joined the live stream, sharing and tagging law enforcement channels. 10 seconds later, the gate crashed open. Black-clad SWAT operatives fanned out shields at the ready. They shouted, "Chicago PD, drop your weapons." Flashbangs detonated with a strobing bang that blurred everything into white noise. Marcus felt the concussion ripple through his chest, but he stood firm. The corrupt officers froze guns halfway to their shoulders. Their eyes darted between the live stream on their phones and the real SWAT formation advancing on them. Marcus watched them disarm themselves, hands shaking as they realized their plan had collapsed. Sophia's voice returned on the feed. "This is what happens when truth meets courage." Standing beneath the wrought iron arch of Burr Oak Cemetery, Marcus lowered his phone and inhaled the cold night air. The pain in his legs was agony, but his heart pounded with vindication. He had turned his moment of utter helplessness into a meticulously executed reckoning. Evelyn's final wish had been honored, and justice at last stood victorious. The first flashbang detonated with a thunderclap at the cemetery gate, igniting the night in searing white light. Marcus felt the concussion slam into his chest, like a battering ram, but he held his ground, every fiber of his being steeled by years of warfare and betrayal. Behind him, Sloan and Reyes, the lead SWAT operators, fired 2 precise rounds of beanbag shotgun shells into the barrel of Detective Miller's rifle, rendering it useless with a single brutal crack. Through the haze of light, Marcus saw Miller's men freeze, eyes wide, mouths agape. A second flashbang bloomed at their flank, eliciting screams as helmets clattered to the grass. Sophia's voice roared over the live feed, cutting through the chaos. "They have your every move recorded, Detective. It's over." In that moment of stunned silence, SWAT fanned out in perfect formation. Sergeant Kim shouted, "Move, secure the target." 2 officers grabbed Miller under each arm and yanked him backward, sending him sprawling. His cuffs snapped onto his wrists with metallic finality, just like Marcus's had. On the left flank, Corporal Diaz pivoted on a dime, sweeping up Officer Patel as he fumbled for his taser. The probe had been thrown at Marcus minutes before. Now Diaz looped the wires into a coil and tossed them aside. Patel's gasps echoed against the tombstones. At the headstone where Marcus had knelt, he sank to his knees, every muscle quivering. Avery fell into his arms, her phone still recording her tears, glinting like broken glass. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she whispered into the mic, then cut the stream. The silence that followed was heavier than any gunshot, but the action was far from over. Through the iron gates, a black SUV thundered up federal agents pouring out to seal the perimeter. Sophia sprinted forward with a portable recorder, thrusting it into Marcus's hand. "They're taking statements now," she panted. "You ready?" He took a ragged breath vision tunnel, narrowed by pain and relief. "Let's finish this." In the distance, flashlight beams danced across police cruisers. Inside one, an inexperienced officer had started radioing for backup, but the SWAT signal jammer clicked on, cutting off every channel with a single cold click. The world fell silent again except for the low hum of victory. Sophia moved beside Avery, hugging her. "You were incredible," she told the teenager whose fierce act of defiance had crumbled her father's empire. Avery looked at Marcus, voice cracking. He was going to kill you. Marcus's hand closed over hers. "Not tonight." As the remaining corrupt officers were forced to the ground in spread eagle positions, SWAT searched their pockets, extracting SD cards, encrypted phones, and a dossier labeled Operation Nightfall. The camera panned over pages of kill orders, timelines, and the chilling note, "Neutralize without trace." Each revelation ignited fresh gasps from the growing crowd of witnesses. Miller, kneeling in the damp grass, stared up at Marcus with hollow eyes. Marcus's voice was low resonant. "You thought you could bury the truth? You were wrong." Around them, emergency lights splashed red and blue across headstones, gleaming on Marcus's battered face. The raw cut on his temple brimmed with blood, and his uniform, once pristine, hung in shreds. Yet, in his eyes burned a fierce light, the vindication of a man who refused to be erased. As forensic teams arrived to collect evidence, Marcus turned to Sophia and Avery. "Thank you," he rasped. His voice trembled not from pain, but from something deeper release. "You gave me back my voice?" Sophia pressed the recorder to his chest. "Your story will run on every network." He nodded, closing his eyes for a moment. The weight of sorrow lifted slightly, replaced by resolve. "Then let them know," he said. "Let them all know." Above, an owl called from the cemetery oaks, a solitary witness to a night where justice, long delayed, finally claimed its due. Justice arrives in waves. News helicopters hover above Burr Oak Cemetery as forensic vans and federal agents fan out across the dew-slick grass. Detectives in crisp suits pore over Miller's seized dossier, its pages smeared with his own signature, Operation Nightfall, each kill order. Now evidence on a federal prosecutor's desk. Crowds gather at the gate, cell phones raised like torches. Witnesses murmur in disbelief as a cameraman from WGN Live streams the arrest. Detective Kyle Miller, kneeling in handcuffs, stares at the ground, his uniform dirt-stained and his badge dulled by the weight of betrayal. Behind him, officers once under his command shuffle through the wrought iron arch in pairs, their faces a mix of shame and relief. On the gravel path, Marcus Johnson steadies himself against the granite bench where his ordeal began. The locket Evelyn gave him swings gently from his fingers, her portrait catching the early dawn light, as if she's smiling at him. Avery Thompson. Her cheeks streaked with tears, and triumph leans in and places her arm around his shoulders. "You're safe now," she whispers. Marcus lets out a trembling laugh, part disbelief, part gratitude, as he feels the solid press of her presence. Nearby, Sofia Ramirez records every moment, her voice calm and measured, as she narrates. "These are the faces of a conspiracy that spanned decades now, exposed by the courage of one veteran, one daughter, and one reporter. The city of Chicago will never forget this night. Social media erupts hashtags like Justice for Marcus and Operation Nightfall Trend within minutes, lighting up screens from Lakeshore Drive to the Loop. Inside a tented command center, SWAT Commander Sergeant Kim briefs federal agents. Exhibit A, the taser probes Marcus carried into evidence. Exhibit B, the radio logs detailing Miller's blood-cold directive, eliminate target. Exhibit C, the poisoning records traced by hospital toxicologists, proving Evelyn's cancer was accelerated by carcinogens planted in her groceries. Each revelation drives another exhale from the assembled press corps. By sunrise, the story has ignited a firestorm. Mayoral aides hold an emergency press conference promising an overhaul of internal affairs and stronger civilian oversight. The Civilian Police Accountability Council vows to fast-track ethics reforms. City Hall's lights burn through pre-dawn haze as legislators draft bills to protect veterans with government-classified knowledge. Marcus watches from the cemetery gate wrapped in a blanket as volunteers step forward with hot coffee and blankets. A young veteran offers a trembling salute. An elderly neighbor lays a fresh bouquet by Evelyn's headstone. Their faces lit by dawn reflect hope, proof that the bonds of community can triumph over corruption. In the days that follow, Miller's indictment makes front-page headlines nationwide. Prosecutors announce charges ranging from attempted murder to conspiracy to kill a protected veteran. Federal investigators name 3 city council members and 2 retired generals complicit in the plot. The network send crews to Marcus's modest apartment, interviewing him as he cradles Evelyn's locket. His voice, though hoarse, rings with resolve. I never wanted revenge. I wanted justice for my wife, for my brothers, and for every voice silenced by fear. Across Chicago, murals sprout Marcus kneeling before Evelyn's grave, clad in army greens against a backdrop of breaking dawn. At community centers, veterans and families gather to share stories galvanized by his example. The Evelyn Johnson Foundation announces free legal and medical aid for caskets and funerals, ensuring no grieving family is left vulnerable. Back at Burr Oak, the morning breeze stirs fallen leaves around Evelyn's headstone. Marcus steps forward, kneels, and places a single white rose on her name, a promise kept. He stands shoulders squared as the camera zooms out, revealing hundreds of people standing behind him, united in grief, in outrage, and ultimately in hope. Justice may have come late, but for Marcus Johnson, it has come at last. Every one of us carries stories we're afraid to tell, secrets that feel heavier than grief itself. Marcus Johnson's ordeal teaches us that silence can become a weapon turned against you. When those in power choose to bury the truth, they risk unearthing a reckoning far more devastating than any cover-up. True courage isn't charging headlong into battle. It's finding your voice when every instinct tells you to stay silent. Marcus was broken by loss, beaten by betrayal, yet he refused to vanish into the shadows. He harnessed his pain, aligned with allies he once saved, and transformed a moment of utter helplessness into a meticulously planned victory. What does that teach us? That our greatest strength often lies dormant until injustice forces us awake. We saw how one daughter's tear-stained defiance shattered a legacy of abuse. Avery's choice to stand against her own father not only saved a life, it shattered an entire conspiracy. It reminds us that sometimes the most potent acts of justice come from the most unexpected places, from those who love us unconditionally, even at great personal cost. And the power of truth broadcast, live unfiltered, became an unstoppable weapon. When Sophia's microphone went live, every lie and every hidden order was exposed in real time. In an age of digital footprints, every whispered command, every incriminating text becomes evidence. That means accountability can outpace corruption if we're willing to shine a light. Finally, Marcus's roses on Evelyn's grave weren't just a tribute to a lost love. They were a symbol of renewal. His story shows us that healing begins when we dare to confront our deepest wounds, when we refuse to let fear dictate our destiny. So ask yourself, what truth are you hiding? Who will stand with you when the world demands your silence? Because real justice starts when ordinary people choose to speak, to record, to bear witness, and to demand that no grave, no matter how sacred, becomes the final resting place. Of Marcus Johnson's story reminds us that even the darkest moments can ignite the brightest flames of justice. He rose from grief and betrayal to expose a conspiracy that reached the highest ranks, and he did it with courage, unity, and unflinching truth. If his fight moved, you share this video now to let everyone know silence is never an option when power is abused. Subscribe for more stories of ordinary heroes who refuse to be silenced, and hit the bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into the battles that shape our world. Comment below. What would you do if you stood in Marcus's shoes? Your voice matters. Together, we keep the light on corruption and stand up for those who can't fight alone. Justice may be long delayed, but it can never be denied. Stay vigilant, stay courageous, and we'll see you in the next story.